serious? Oh my gosh. Guys, I literally just did 45 minutes of review, only for none of it to record. I am ticked. Oh my gosh. I'm like livid right now. But we're gonna move on from that, okay? Today we are continuing the Harry Potter series because it is my favorite, and I don't really care if you want to hear about it or not. I'm still gonna talk about it. I did have a list of things I wanted to talk about, but apparently my life just doesn't like me right now, as evidenced by the fact that this did not record. But I have no clue where my list went. I had it when I did my first review, and I don't have it now. So that's how it's gonna be. That's how it's gonna be. I'm gonna move forward. We're gonna select through this together. Chamber of Secrets. In the first book, Harry discovers that he's a wizard, and he completes his first year at the magical school Hogwarts. And so now he is back, but strange things are going to be happening in Hogwarts, and it begins even before he gets there. So he's been stuck all summer with his horrible muggle family, the Dursleys, and they are expecting some important people, and they're like, all right, Harry, since you're a servant, you're going to do all this servant's work. And that's when he sees eyes watching him from the hedge. Later that night, when he's locked in his room, making no noise and pretending he does not exist, Dobby the house elf appears, and he's like, dude, do not go back to Hogwarts. And Harry's like, I've got to go back to Hogwarts because that's my home. And then here we go. Dobby prevents him from making it onto the train, which means that he and his best friend Ron fly a car to school, which sounds really cool until I guess this is like, I don't know, a 7 or 8 hour journey, and they realize, hey, we have no air conditioning in our car, we have nothing to eat but candy, and after a while, when it's really hot, candy is not what you want. And then the car, as all things Weasley, it starts to sputter out. Not only do they crash into the Whomping Willow, but they are seen because the invisibility boosters go out. So they're in tons of trouble before school even starts. And then yes, bad things start to happen. Harry starts to hear voices. People start to become petrified. We have no idea what's going on. And we also have a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, I can't say his name, Gilderoy Lockhart, who is completely inept, but likes to pretend that he's got all that and a bag of chips going on. Eventually we learn that Lord Voldemort, when he had been a student, he had stored his teenage self in a diary, which Ginny Weasley had gotten her hands on, had invested in, and then had basically been taken over by that piece of Lord Voldemort so that she could call forth Slytherin's monster, the Basilisk. Ginny is kind of the one behind it all, but not really, because she's being possessed. Harry defeats Riddle, he defeats the Basilisk, and there we go, we're done. I felt like in many ways this plot was a little bit more exciting, at least to actually put into words. Let's talk about Gilderoy, because dude's a moron, and I had talked about in my first review how I don't understand how characters like Draco Malfoy or Snape can get away with stuff. Their behaviors just go unchecked, and it's the same thing with Lockhart, except for the fact that there's almost no other option for a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, because, spoiler alert, Tom had wanted, or Voldemort, whatever you want to call him at this point, he had wanted the Defense Against the Dark Arts job right around the time he graduated school. He was told no, so he jinxed the job. So I'm guessing that's like, what, 50 odd years of Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers. And so as far as this series goes, there's a new teacher in that position every year. I don't know if that's how it was in the preceding decades, But yes, I get it. Word gets around, don't take this job. So I understand why Lockhart got the position. What I don't understand is why he's allowed to get away with his idiocy. Except for the sake of the book. Except because it's entertaining and it creates drama and tension. I love him and I hate him. I hate him because he's a moron. I hate him because I'm like, do you really believe the things you say and do? I love him because he believes the things he says and does. He is so deluded. And I constantly find myself wanting novellas. There's so much about this world that has potential to have its own, just a little short story to expand upon characters or situations. And Lockhart falls into that because we know he's a terrible wizard. The only thing he's really good at is memory charm. And that is how he writes his books of his daring adventure. What? Adventures? Daring adventures. And so what I would love to know is, how did that get started? I am just imagining, dude has no friends because he just doesn't. Seeing him as somebody who, even though he has no reason to be pompous, is pompous because he wants to do great things. He wants to be a great wizard. He goes through school wanting something he can never achieve, and eventually he comes up with this plan. So he's like, all right, I'm just gonna go seek out the wizards who do great things. I'm gonna steal their stories. I'm gonna wipe their memories, and then I'm gonna pretend they're my own. I want to know, aside from what really was going on in his head during this time of his life where he came up with his big plan to become famous. When he is at school, how does he feel about his inadequacies? Like when he gets rid of all the bones in Harry's arm. How does he just skate over that? Like, is he not embarrassed? Has he been at this for so long that really none of his failures matter to him? Is he so pompous that he's like, oh, people won't care because look at my books. Obviously, I know what I'm doing. So this is just a blip on my radar. This is just a one-time oopsie daisy. I really want to get into his head because I feel like the entire book, he does wear a facade. He has on this mask. And it's not until the end when he is tasked with finding the monster who has taken Ginny Weasley and then is confronted by Harry and Ron does he really show his true colors, because he's like, boys, books are misleading. And the guys are like, dude, you wrote the book. And he's like, well, nobody would buy the books if they didn't think I did them. So he really shows his true colors, because then he's like, and now I'm going to have to wipe your memory. I'm just going to let Ginny die, and then I'm going to make up this whole story about how I couldn't save any of you. And I want more of that. I want to see Lockhart at his desk when he's alone, thinking about his day. Thinking about, oh man, this is what I did to Harry, or this is how I failed in my lesson plan, or even when he gives the kids like their first pop quiz, which was really just a ruse to see how much they knew about him. Is he really that self-centered? I mean, the characters honestly just make the series. They're so multi-dimensional, and that goes towards even these really small characters, these one-off characters like Lockhart, and I just know there's more to him, and I would love to see what J.K. Rowling had in her head, or has in her head. What knowledge did she not share with us yet? Let's talk about Voldemort, okay? In my last review, I mentioned how, not annoying, but like how convenient is it that Voldemort pops up every single year that Harry's at Hogwarts? That it just so happens that he decides to find a body the first time that Harry comes to Hogwarts. And so like in that, I kind of wish that we had different villains. Yes, he is the overarching villain, but why is it that he just so happens to be the problem every time Harry's at school? You know, it's not when Harry's on summer vacation, it's only when Harry's at school, which I get it. For the sake of a book, that is the most exciting time. If you've ever read Anne Brashare's Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, we only see them during the summer. We never see them during school because that's not when things work. So I get it. Voldemort really only works during school. That is when Harry is part of the magical community, but if I think about it too much, which I do, because I'm that kind of person, I'm like, really? Again? In this case, I kind of liked how he was the villain, because it's not like, oh, well, I'm back at the school and I'm gonna make trouble for Harry. It's kind of incidental, because as I said, Ginny had gotten her hands on this diary, but it wasn't supposed to happen. I like that. And we had no clue that he was the actual villain. The villain was the basilisk. We didn't know where it came from or why. I mean, we knew it had connection to Slytherin, we knew it had connections to Slytherin's heir, but we have no idea that Voldemort, aka Tom Riddle, had any connection to Slytherin, because we don't learn that until the 6th book. Well, I mean, technically we do learn that in this book, because he says when he and Harry meet up in the Chamber of Secrets, he's like, I'm Slytherin's heir, but we don't know why. We don't know how. I liked the magic aspect. It's like with a Polyjuice potion that Hermione brews, because the trio, the gang, automatically suspect Draco of being Slytherin's heir. And so they're like, all right, you know, let's go bust him, but we have to be stealthy. So she brews this potion that will enable them to turn into other people. Obviously, she turns into a cat, and, you know, they learn that Draco is not Slytherin's heir. But I really loved seeing Rowling's imagination come into play and to show us how she's going to incorporate all of these elements into her world. Moving on, let's talk about the diary, because I think it's just a great object. One thing that I admire so much about J.K. Rowling is how she makes every little thing count, whether it's in this book or whether it's just the series as a whole. A lot of it has to do with her characters. Like Lupin represents people who suffer from AIDS and the discrimination that they suffer. Or even Hagrid, how he's half giant and how discriminated against giants are. And so it's just, she does such a wonderful job at inclusion, but she also does a really great job at the small things, like the diary. Because we all know what a diary is for. We all know that it's to write our deepest, darkest secrets in. But have we ever thought about how maybe diaries can be harmful? Well, that's what she's doing here, and I love it so much, because she has Ginny pouring herself into this diary, unknowing that the diary is going to take her life force from her. And I just think those little details are fantastic, because it's just something small in our lives that we take for granted, and then she just casts this massive spotlight. I aspire to be as inventive as she is. Let's keep going with the diary thing, though. If I have not a criticism necessarily, but if one thing really bothers me or jumps out at me as not making sense in this book, it is when Harry is brought into the diary to witness Tom Riddle's memory of the last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened. We jump into Professor Dippett's office, and Professor Dippett is the past current headmaster of Hogwarts. But my question is this: if this is Tom's memory, and Tom is not in the room, how does Tom know what Professor Dippett's doing? This is my over-analytical brain being like, this doesn't work, but it is the one thing that really just doesn't make sense. Like in the first book, because the whole series is written in third person past, third person limited, so we only know what's going on in Harry's mind, but then we pull back at that Quidditch scene and we know exactly what his friends are doing and thinking. This is the same idea, where how do we know what another character is doing when the POV character isn't present? It really doesn't, but it struck me, I guess it was this past reading, I was like, we should not know what's going on in this office before Tom gets there. Enough of the diary, enough of Tom. Let's talk about Moaning Myrtle. Okay, guys, so I will never be able to see her as anything but a 40-year-old actress playing a, like, 14-year-old girl, because we all know that the actress in the movies is not a teenager. She does a fantastic job, but she is Moaning Myrtle in my brain. Beyond that, Moaning Myrtle is one of the most annoying characters in this series, but I love how there is no reason to suspect that Moaning Myrtle has to do with the Chamber of Secrets. And then all of a sudden, Rowling pulls it out, and you're like, oh, I should have seen that! She's in the bathroom where the Chamber of Secrets comes out. Of course, we don't really know the entrance to this Chamber of Secrets until really late in the book. But there's so many clues that are planted that we never pick up on until Rowling pulls back that curtain, and it's like, I'm an idiot. I'm a total idiot. Again, I love a novella from her, because my favorite part is when Harry and Ron realize that Moaning Myrtle is the student that was the only student that has been killed by the basilisk. So they go to ask her about it, and they're asking about how she died, and she's like, oh, Olive Hornsby, I made her sorry that she ever teased me about my glasses. I would just love to see Moaning Myrtle in school, because I'm sure she was as bratty as Gilderoy Lockhart. She was probably worse than Gilderoy Lockhart, because as a ghost, all she does is mope, and so I'm sure she was just as bad when she was alive. But I would love just to see a little bit more of Moaning Myrtle, perhaps something a little less annoying, but yeah, she's equally funny and annoying, and I loved how pivotal she became without us ever knowing. But before I continue, I need a little drink. Don't you just love magic? If there is one scene or one storyline I really could have done without, it's Nearly Headless Nick and his death day party. Granted, it does introduce Moaning Myrtle, but it also includes probably my least favorite character, and that would be Peeves, the poltergeist. If I thought Moaning Myrtle was annoying, if I thought Lockhart was annoying, it is nothing compared to Peeves. I really love how he's inherent to Hogwarts, like, because poltergeists are about mischief, and so wherever children are, mischief will abound, and ergo, you have a poltergeist. But I really could do without him. He is just pointless. I enjoyed him at first. I just think he's pointless. Yeah. But, so, yes, we get introduced to Moaning Myrtle. We, have a little something with Peeves. But I guess because I don't care that much about the school ghosts, and I really am grossed out by the fact that Nearly Headless Nick is nearly headless. I don't want to hear him moaning about the fact that he was not allowed to join the Headless Hunt. I mean, dude, like, I get it. You're almost decapitated, but you're not fully decapitated. And as Sir Mimsy something hyphenated Porpington, again, that's something I should know the name of, but I don't. Probably because it's part of my least favorite scene, so I'm like, meh. They have games that require the use of a head. And if your head is attached to your body, then you can't participate in the games. So I'm like, quit moaning about this. And I just thought that scene, and it probably because I get hungry every time I read that scene. I don't know why, but the fact that then Harry, Ron, and Hermione never make it to the feast, I guess by that point I am hangry, and now I'm blaming it all on Nearly Headless Nick. But I just wonder, what purpose does that scene serve? Because I'm completely fine without it in the movies. Like, if we took it out of the book, what really would we be missing? I think we could fit Moaning Myrtle in somewhere else. Yeah, and saved us some time. Although, honestly, like, these books, take me a day to read. So I guess if you took anything out of them, they might be too short. Who's to say? Okay, so this next point, we can agree to disagree. Because I'm going to talk about Hagrid a little bit. On the whole, I really like Hagrid. But in this book, basically this book forward, he becomes a little less likable to me. And if you like an effeminate man, if you like a man who is really in touch with his emotions, who will cry at the drop of a hat, then yes, you are gonna disagree with me. But I started getting irritated with him. Maybe it's because he's this big guy and he's supposed to be part giant, so he's supposed to have this strength to him. But I'm like, why are you so sensitive? I can take it to a certain extent, and then it's just like, all right, we get it. He's not a man's man. You know, not that men have to be so strong that they can't recognize their emotions. But I feel like that's all Hagrid does. And I just want him to be a bit stronger, like internally a stronger force to help support Harry, rather than just blaming everything on himself and saying he's at fault for this, that, or the other. I'd like him to, I guess, be more proactive in certain ways, and he can't do that if all he does is cry. So that's my little Hagrid rant. Moving forward, Rowling is a master craftsman. I love how, oh my gosh, I need to quit drinking this. I keep forgetting what I want to say. I love how something that we really see in every single book, a distraction, where we think that the villain is over here when really the villain is over here. In this book, yeah, Voldemort is the villain, but he's not really the villain. For most of the book, we're thinking that Draco is the heir of Slytherin, and that Draco is the one who is calling forth Slytherin's monster, when in reality, it's actually Ginny who's at fault for all of this. Obviously, it's not really her fault, but because of her actions with this diary, she's the one Tom possesses and then uses to write on the walls, uses to kill the roosters, uses to call forth the monster. And then we learn that not only is it Tom who is at fault, but Tom is Voldemort. You read these books, and they look so easy, so effortless. And that, in and of itself, tells you how hard she worked, how hard it was to write these books, for everything to come together so seamlessly, to smack you across the face, but at the same time, you're like, holy cow, it was there all along, you know? No wonder I have a writer's crush on her, because she is someone who is to be admired. She is someone who knows the craft, knows how to craft, and I mean, honestly, guys, if we could be writing besties, like if I could have a dream critique partner, it would be J.K. Rowling. My final talking point is this: the car. So when Ron and Harry follow the spiders, and can I say, this is one of my favorite parts of both the books and the movie. How funny it is with Ron and his fear of spiders. Genius. So spot on. They follow the spiders into the woods and are rescued by the Weasleys' car. Does this car run on gas? The Weasleys drove the car to the train station at the beginning of the book. Harry and Ron and then fly it to Hogwarts. And then, towards the end of the year, this car is still putzing around. So how is it still, like, tell me, how is this car still surviving? How is it still moving? Maybe because it's a magic car, it does not need to run on gas. It just runs on, like, some kind of magic ingredients, or, you know, forget I said any of that. My question is, how is this car still on the move? I love the comparison of it to a dog, because, like, What a weird comparison that works so well. But I still can't help but wonder, how's this car still kicking? What does it run off of? Because my car, on a good week, I still have to fill up once a week. On a bad week, twice a week. So this car has survived however long from the borough to the train station in London, and then however long from London to wherever the castle is, and then a whole year just trundling through the brush. Food for thought. Thank you for joining me. I can't wait to talk about Prisoner of Azkaban, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. I hope that little bit of magic worked. If not, I really don't care. It's too late. I have much more to do. I have 5, 10. I have 5 minutes to get a little segment in before I've got other things to do, and then I will come back and finish because there's no way all of this is getting done in 5 minutes. Let me actually check to make sure I hit record. Yes, we're good. So yeah. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft. Or as Dobby would say, actually, I'm not even gonna try. I'm too tired for that. Easy peasy mac and cheesy. This dude is so pompous. I'm gonna run away instead. So let's start with the foreshadowing. So not only do we get foreshadowing in the beginning of books or throughout books that just pertain to that singular book, but we get foreshadowing that has to do with the series as a whole. Like the Weeping Willow. Not the Weeping Willow, like the Whomping Willow. I've had too much of this, apparently. The Whomping Willow, I have some mixed feelings about, because on one hand, I feel like it's a plant. Not only do we have the Whomping Willow, as I mentioned, we have the diary. We have... I lied. Those are the only 2 I can think of right now. Sorry! That's about it. I gotta get going. I will see you when I get back to this. Until then, see ya. Which will be in like 1 second. Your time.